Coming to you from the top of Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Welcome to the Tim McLoone Radio Show, where each week we bring you interesting, creative, and dynamic people from the worlds of entertainment, sports, business, food, and philanthropy. Today's guests are television personality, Emmy and Peabody Award winner, and CBS legal commentator and analyst, Jack Ford. We also have singer and songwriter and member of Tim McLoone and the Shirley's Band, Maureen McCrink.
Yes,
My name is Paul Diamede, and here's your host, Tim McLoone.
That applause, of course, is for Maureen McCrink, and
Absolutely.
that was Maureen McCrink applauding the loudest of anyone. So that's the way it works right here. Well, thanks for being here in Ocean Grove, I'm about to say, in Asbury Park. There's a reason. I have a reason.
Usually I make gaffes like that.
I have a
Tim.
reason for almost everything I do, and God knows I have to come up with a lot of them lately. We talk a little bit about the Jersey Shore coming back and all the rest of it, and StrongerThanTheStorm.org, by the way, if you want to. Oh no, it's StrongerThanTheStorm.com. As a matter of fact, it's .com. But at any rate, there were stories in the papers over the last 10 days or so about, when everyone's watching this recovery, and of course all of us here down at the Jersey Shore have been trying to sprint to get to Memorial Day weekend, which is past now, and we don't really get to the season until a little bit later in June, almost to the end, and certainly July and August are crucial. But the people in the Ocean Grove Boardwalk, and we're going to talk to Jack Ford about this later. One of the great things about having an attorney on the show like this is you can ask all kinds of questions and you don't have to pay him, which is fantastic. I have a couple of personal things I'm going to try and go through. We're having some issues and see if I can get some free advice. But
Jack will help us.
Nah, he'd figure out a way to charge me, but it's all right. But the Ocean Grove Boardwalk has been turned down twice now by FEMA for a rebuild because it's owned by the Ocean Grove Camp Meeting Association, which is considered, and it is, a private company, in essence, that owns a lot of the property there.
Right.
And what makes it even more complicated is it's basically a Christian-based organization. Right. And so they're looking to get federal and or state funds to rebuild their boardwalk, and they've been turned down twice. And their side of it is that they refer to it really as a pedestrian highway, I think is the quote I saw the other day. And it's certainly true. Our business here in Asbury Park is extremely dependent upon that boardwalk because it connects Bradley Beach, then the people in Ocean Grove, which is a very large population, and then they walk right down the boardwalk into Asbury Park.
Right.
If that boardwalk does not get rebuilt, and to the fact that it can be used, freely in both directions, not having to go around cones and fences and the things, it's going to definitely negatively impact on Asbury Park, and more importantly, negatively impact on me, and I can't take it. But there was also another story, and we're going to talk to Jack about that with Ocean Grove, because I'd be curious to see and he won't charge for that.
No.
That the Red Cross is still holding on to $110 million in Sandy aid.
Wow.
And I'm not drawing any conclusions with this because I know that the governor's wife was criticized for holding on to. They had over $100 million too. I don't even know if it was more than that, and they have now been doing it. And I think that on her side, she was saying, listen, we just don't want to start tossing it out there. We have to see how everything plays out and see where the need is. And then you've got the people on the other side, of course, saying, hey, my need is right now.
Right now, yeah.
And the Red Cross is saying, well, we're going to play this out longer term. And for people that are still almost literally living in their cars, but are certainly living in motels or in friends' basements, it's a tough pill for them to swallow to hear people say, well, we got to wait a little longer. The storm was, at the end of October.
And when you're looking at $100 million and another $100 million, and you're just trying to get back on your feet, I'm
figuring if somebody would give me 10% of that, I'm not going to complain. So the other is the FEMA flood maps that everyone's waiting for now. We're very concerned in our restaurant. I should say former restaurant up in Seabright, the Rum Runner, which the deck of which is sitting in the river, and the building itself, I don't think is habitable again. And we don't know what the rules are yet of how high we would have to build that stuff. I could not lift a 70-year-old building up, 15 feet or something like that. So we're still waiting for the proverbial other shoe to drop on that kind of information. But on a different subject altogether. Thank God. We've talked in the past about my disabilities with phones.
Yes.
Just how awful. I'm still fighting my iPhone. I just...
Is that why you don't answer my phone calls, or it's something else?
No, there's other reasons.
That's what I thought.
But the problem with the problem I have is that it's all about IMing. And instead of, I was okay with texting people. I liked my BlackBerry, and I don't work for any of these companies, and they could care less about me. But my BlackBerry was really simple. I want to receive phone calls and make phone calls. And if someone leaves me a message, I would like to be able to access that message. And the other part is I will send emails and I'll receive emails. And my son, Jack, made a nice big font that even an old person like me could read. And that was fine. The problem I have with IMing which is what everybody does, is you can't say goodbye. It never ends. It's like, okay, see you later. Good, fine, later, night.
I never thought of that. You're
lots
right.
of love.
Just
Laugh out loud. I didn't even know
on.
what LOL meant. I thought it was lots of luck. And then I thought it was lots of love. Laugh out loud. I could care. But they don't say goodbye. It's just like this thing keeps going. And then if you don't say it, it's like if you had like a puppy love romance. I love you. Oh, no, I love you too. I can't say goodbye. That's what this stuff is like. It's a pain in the neck. But anyway, so here is my most recent experience with the world of phones and children and understanding this much better than I, an old person, ever will. So about a week and a half ago, my son Connor, who'd been away playing in a basketball tournament, but also had been down in Washington with a school trip. I literally hadn't seen him for about 5 days. And he says, can we, and he is 14. He says, can we go to CJ's, which happens to be a restaurant of ours. It just happens.
Really?
CJ McLoone's in
restaurant?
Tinton Falls, yeah.
Right.
I don't like talking about
Do
that
they have a
stuff on the
Sunday
air.
brunch?
They do have a Sunday brunch. It's lovely, and they're open for lunch and dinner 7
We're
days and nights.
shameless about this.
But you don't want to bring that up on a show like this, because I don't want people thinking that we're just all about telling them about our restaurants in Long Branch and Asbury, where we are
And West
now.
Orange.
Why would we do that?
Right.
You know. And if they happen to be in Maryland, that we have one down there.
Brutal.
As I said to Ken Danico a while ago, I said, proving we can lose money in more than one state. But at any rate, so he said, what was I even talking about? So Connor says, can we go out tonight and watch the final game? This was last week between Miami and Indiana in the NBA, because my son Connor's all about basketball. So he and Jack say, yeah. My wife and my daughter say, not so much. And they stay home. So the three of us go over to CJ's to watch the seventh and final game. That's a boys' night out. And so we're sitting there eating way too much food. And the food was really good, by the way, at CJ McLoone's. And at any rate, so the whole point of the story is I decide to entertain us there while we're waiting for the game to start. Why don't we play a fantasy basketball game and we're each going to pick the top 5 players in the history of professional basketball and make our fantasy team and see who has the best team. So we start doing this thing, and I'm taking, old people. I didn't take Bob Cousy, but I was thinking about it.
Like Pistol Pete?
I did a Pistol Pete on my team. Very good. And Jack even reached back, though. He went with Bill Russell as one of his guys. But, Kareem is on there and whatever. We're rolling around, and we're trying to talk about Wade. And, of course, there's only one man that they all want on their team, and they're fighting with each other. But at any rate, we make our 5-person teams, and I'm looking around for a piece of paper and a pencil. Because I'm 65. That's what we do. That's what people my age do. And meanwhile, so Jack says, okay, I've got the results. I said, what do you mean the results? He was writing down the names of the teams on his phone and then tweeted them to his friends, and they all voted on who had the best team.
And you're still looking for a pencil.
And I'm looking for a pencil.
That's great.
These are my boys. And so meanwhile, this is the shock. Jack, who tweeted it out, of course, he won.
Right.
And his brother got
friends.
and he's 15, and his brother who's 14 got second, and I, of course, taking up the result because of Pistol Pete Maravich, who they don't remember from before they actually had baskets. He was working on the original peach basket.
Right.
But, so I think, anyway, we're going to have a great show tonight. Tell about it, Paul.
Broadcasting from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Listen to us every Saturday at 5 p.m. on WOR 710 AM and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Tim McLoone Radio. Listen to this show as well as past shows on our website, TimMcLooneRadioShow.com.
Yeah, you want to go back to those past shows.
Those past shows.
They were brilliant.
Some of them legendary. No, they're fun. They're great. You're listening to Tim McLoone Radio Show. We will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to the Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And now here's your host, Tim McLoone.
Yes, I am. I am your host, whether you want me to be or not. And our guest here is our good friend, Jack Ford. Jack, it was killing me. I was trying to play appropriate music for you, legal music, and I couldn't remember how to do Perry Mason theme. It wasn't going well. Anyway, Jack, thanks so much for being here.
It's always a pleasure to me. This is the one place I get the opportunity to applaud you. In all of the years that we've known it, I said, I've done a lot of things with Tim over the nearly 40 years we've been together, but I don't often get the opportunity to clap for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it doesn't come up very often, and I have never applauded for you. I just want to be clear about this.
And for good reason.
So we have to talk socially first, though, because the big event took place. We spoke to our listeners about it. My godchild, who happens also to be related to you,
Isn't that
through
funny?
marriage.
Funny how that worked out.
Your daughter, the beloved Ashley, did get married a couple of weeks ago, and my band did play. And Maureen, who will be appearing later, was there that day, as was Amy Bros, the #1 Ranger fan, who just had a fight with Ken Danico. Even though
Amy drew a game misconduct.
Yeah. Even though these shows are a full week apart, it was amazing that Ken was still here. But it was a great day, wasn't it? I mean,
you know what?
Except it rained.
I said to the band folks that are here, you guys and
band folks.
The
there
band
you
folks,
go.
Isn't it?
That's why we walk in the back door, Jack. Because we are. Oh, here they come. The band folks. The show people.
You guys, anybody who's ever heard you play, know always spectacular.
Oh, jeez.
Beyond greatness that day.
Keep going.
And as a matter of fact, I was saying that the waiters and waitresses were so enjoying the music that apparently they were in the kitchen dancing during the course of it. But I do have to tell real quickly the story that I actually told when I stood up and took the microphone and talked at my daughter's wedding.
For about half an hour.
And I'm a lawyer. What do you expect? And the great thing for us was not only was it the music fabulous, but having Tim there as Ashley's godfather to play for her. So I felt I compelled to tell the story that Tim was literally there when my wife Dorothy went into labor to deliver Ashley.
Please clear this up quickly.
Here's the thing. Tim was deeply within the midst of his avowed bachelorhood at the time. All right, he didn't have his lovely 4 children yet. So we're sitting in a restaurant in Asbury Park, and all of a sudden my wife says, "Oh my goodness, I think I've gone into labor. We got to go." And we start scrambling around, and Tim says, "Okay, good. I'll get the car. You grab your pocketbook, and I'll drive us, and we'll go to your house, and we'll have dessert there." I said, "Timmy, I think you're missing something here about delivering a child and being in labor. We're going to have to skip dessert, if you don't mind." I've never seen him so crestfallen in my life that we were skipping dessert. He said, "Can I bring it to the hospital? Is there something we can do here?"
The way it actually happened now.
No, that's pretty much the way. It
Well,
happened.
it is more or less. But first of all, you are the one about desserts. And I felt that you knew your wife was going to have a baby, but you're figuring, what the heck do I have to do? I've got nothing. So I actually said, I'll order dessert and I'll bring it over to the house. And then you said, no, we're having a baby. I said, oh, well, we don't have to have dessert. I'll just come over. And then you're like, no, we're really going to the hospital now, Tim. It's time for you to go home.
I said, "Tim, we love you. We love you dearly. But you know what? We're going to leave you out of this part of the relationship. You can be the godfather. We were happy to do that. But I think we're going to leave you out of the delivery part, if you don't mind."
That beautiful daughter of yours. And if any of you saw her, I mean, and what a spectacular person she's turned out to be. Not that any of us were surprised. Yeah. It was like from day one. Baby Spot. She was so little.
I know. She was a little tiny thing.
But now it's Doctor. Oh, my goodness.
Dr. Ashley Ford Haggerty. Now she's a cancer surgeon at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. So we're very proud of your goddaughter.
You should be. I think. And we'll do this whole thing about Ashley. What the heck, The thing that was amazing is when I would speak to her at various times, and she was actually so helpful to us when our son was sick with leukemia. And to think I'm speaking to my goddaughter and I'm asking her questions, that's not the surprise part that I would ask. The surprise part was she knew the answer to everything. She's damn smart.
The first time I met her over the hospital for something in Philadelphia, and she said, "Come on down, let me show you my operating rooms." Now, I still think of her as a 5-year-old sitting on my lap, and she's bringing me in and showing me where she does the surgery. And
she was great with an easy bake oven. You have to admit.
Absolutely. All of you are parents. There's just something magical about when your children grow up to be themselves. And we see it, you have your 4 wonderful kids, and you just, it's something that just takes your breath away.
Yeah, well, what I found interesting is when I would speak to her at various times and she was going through all the rotations, and she kind of fell in love with every rotation. I think that's what happens if you really are going to, how many years did she go to?
Well, it's 4 years of med school, 4 years of residency as an OBGYN, now 3 years as a fellowship in gynecologic oncology. Although I did say to her when she decided to go into that field and was going to start her OBGYN residency in order to move into the GYN oncology field. And I said to her, "Sweetheart," I said, here's the thing. I said, "I was happy to pay for your college and for medical school and to help you get through this." I said, "How does OBGYN help your dad?" I said, "I'm thinking geriatric orthopedics between me and Tim will keep you busy forever."
Well, we do have to get around to the legal side. There was another reason for you to be here. I started forgetting what it was, but I mentioned actually in our opening about Ocean Grove, and I think that's a really, it was funny because the newspaper articles were really tiptoeing around it. That to me, it's a church and state question. But it wasn't saying that in this article. It was kind of like, well, it's a private organization, but they weren't spelling out what the private organization was. What's your take on Ocean Grove's complaint?
What's interesting about it, and you and I, again, old enough to remember the
we have
history.
To stop saying that.
We probably should,
depressed.
shouldn't we? but remembering the history of Ocean Grove, when I'm growing up down in Point Pleasant Beach, and Ocean Grove was this oddity. Because if you remember, at midnight Saturday night, an enormous chain would go up across the entranceways to Ocean Grove. Because the rules were, can't drive on Saturday, you can't drink on Saturday, there are all sorts of, Sunday, all sorts of rules that were part of the religious traditions.
The Saturday one was a different enclave.
Yeah, the Saturday one was where you were saying all you can do is drink on Saturday. So ultimately, somebody looked at it and said, well, you know what, you can't really do that because you're taking money and resources from Neptune Township, providing you with police services, and that went away. I'm thinking if I'm representing Ocean Grove right now, I would say, well, you know what, guys, you sort of can't have it both ways. You told us we couldn't do that, so we can't. So now we're coming to you saying, all right, our boardwalk is gone. You know, let's treat this the way you would treat any other boardwalk. As you said, they're arguing it's a pedestrian walkway, essentially. Treat it the way we treat our streets. That's the argument I would make for them. But essentially, as you said, somebody has said, well, wait a minute, this is sort of a different entity. It's not really an incorporated town, but in some ways it is. I think ultimately, my hope is they'll figure something out. But I think there could be some interesting arguments. And as you said, it's basically church and state with a lot of wrappings around it, a lot of things disguising it.
About one of the worst sentences you can hear is, I'm here from the government, I'm here to help you. The problem is, we didn't put a dollar. I believe it's $1.2 million that they're looking for. It's not like they're saying, give us $50,000.
It's not an insignificant amount of money.
Boards.
Right. I mean, even though there's a lot of money being dedicated to these repairs and replenishments, it's not an insignificant amount of money. And I'm sure there's some people out there who are saying, it's a religious entity, why should they get my tax dollars? But I think you're going to see some other arguments that are going to explain why it's not just going to a religious entity. It's intended to enhance the public's access. So my hope is they're going to resolve it sometime soon.
Okay, so moving on to a very serious crime, but in a sense a bizarre media experience is the Arias case, which I'm going through TV one night. Is it HLN?
HLN used to be Headline News.
24/7 covering this woman's murder trial. I mean, literally 24/7. You could turn it on any time, day or night, and they're talking about why was that? What was the fascination?
First of all, we've always had a fascination with trials. If you think of it, where do we build all of our courthouse? In the center of the town square. And it was, in many ways, a source of entertainment for people, historically.
I saw those movies from the medieval times. Let's burn them.
Yeah, but they had an audience.
Throw them in the river, and if they don't float, they were guilty.
So the idea is, and much of what I do is chronicle the trials that we've been interested in, and I've covered back from O.J. Simpson and Oklahoma City bombing and all of these, the Clinton impeachment trial. I was puzzled by the Jodi Arias case. You might remember it. It was this woman, fairly attractive woman, who was charged with murdering her boyfriend. She claimed it was a consequence of a combination of self-defense and abuse over a period of time. Now, the problem with that defense was that she stabbed him dozens of times, slit his throat, and put a bullet in his head. Which might make you say, really? For self-defense, did you really need all of that? Which is what the prosecutor said, but in a far more aggravated fashion. Yeah. But I don't know why in many, not everybody blew out all their programming, but Headline News did. Curiously, their ratings went through the roof. Of course, the day after the trial was over, the ratings disappeared. But there's just something about, I guess, an attractive woman and this bizarre story of it's an attractive woman with sex and violence and betrayals and all of those arguments. They're all basic elements of drama, but it is sort of curious that you'd have that many people who are saying, I want this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But they got them. There were people there who wanted to do
limited it to like 4 days.
And you cut it down to like 12, 14 hours. Well, Tim would call me in the middle of the night saying, let's talk about Jodi Arias, can we? I said, Tim, it's 4 in the morning. He says, okay, we'll only talk for like an hour or so. We'll be good.
But I think part of the dialogue that was being sold to everyone to keep you watching was that she was flirting with the jury and that she was this sex pot who was like making this whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you looked at her, because clearly if I'm her lawyer, and her lawyer was smart enough to say, I don't want you to look like that.
Yeah.
So the pictures the prosecutor kept showing of, she was blonde and the really seductress. In the courtroom, her hair was dark. She had the Elvis Costello glasses going on, which sort of takes a bit of that dramatic sex appeal away from you. But trials are a visual experience. They're a theatrical experience, and they played it out that way. The interesting part of it is the jury found her guilty of the murder. Right. Not a big surprise, given the facts. But they were looking for the death penalty. They tried the death penalty phase. Death penalty cases are 2 parts. First trial, are you guilty or not? Second, a full-blown trial, usually the same jury, are we going to give you the death penalty or life in prison? The jury was hung. They couldn't decide whether she gets the death penalty or not. In almost every other jurisdiction in the country, that would automatically mean life in prison. But they have a different rule there where they're going to come after her. They get one more shot, one more trial.
Those Arizonans, be careful.
Yeah, be careful what you do there. They're going to pick a new jury, and they're going to try one more time to give her the death penalty.
All right, totally different one. There's the stop and frisk issue, which I think is fascinating. Basically empowering the police with the DNA sample that they can now take. Yeah. What's your take on this? Because this is a rough one.
I said we've got combining 2 different things. You got the stop and frisk arguments. You have the Supreme Court coming down yesterday and a very interesting coalition of votes saying that it's all right when you arrest somebody, you can take a DNA swab. Basically, they equated it to taking fingerprints from somebody. So now people are looking, and it's the classic, not just tension, but conflict between personal rights and liberties and personal safety. And so talking about the stop and frisk, and we're seeing a trial taking place in New York, and New York has said, from the mayor through the police commissioner and through the ranks, have said, look, we're not just stopping anybody. We've got has to be some sort of reasonable suspicion to stop a person. And they're saying, look at the crime numbers. They've gone down dramatically since we've started to do this. We've recovered a gazillion guns and kept this out. And what's added to their argument is the people in the community, the citizens have come out and said, we love this. It's making us safer. But there is no doubt that on the other side of that argument are people saying, look, I'm not a criminal, but I happen to be black walking down the street in the Bronx at 2 in the morning, and the next thing I know, I'm spread-eagled against the building. I've never done a thing wrong in my life. And why should that happen to me? And isn't that, what does that say about our society if we're countenancing that? They're both great arguments.
Yeah.
I mean, you listen to both of them, and if you're a community person saying, my crime has gone down, and you know what, Jack Ford, if you got frisked, stopped and frisked, I'm sorry for you. But it took about 5 minutes of your time, but the other bad guys that got stopped and frisked maybe saved some lives in my community.
But other people say, well, you're a white middle-class man, you're not going to get stopped.
And the other thing to say is, it's easy for you to say that if you've never been the one who's had to assume the position and be frisked on a street. It carries some compelling arguments there.
We're speaking with Jack Ford, legal correspondent for CBS News. And I have another one for you, which is sort of related, which is the Trayvon Martin case. Yeah. Because here was a situation, it's racial profiling is what I'm after. And what surprised me was, the NRA would like you to think, the thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Well, in this case, it may not have been a bad guy, and he didn't have the gun. The good guy had the gun.
If you remember the case down in Florida, George Zimmerman, who is a neighborhood watch person, licensed to carry a gun, carrying that gun, and he sees what he said was a suspicious individual. And here's where the stories diverge. He says he approaches Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin gets violent and comes after him, strikes him first. Trayvon Martin's family and the prosecutors are saying, no, you initiated this conflict. And as a consequence, you can't start the fight and then pull out a gun and say, okay, now it's okay for me to defend myself, bang, you're dead.
Stand your ground.
Right. And Florida is one of the states, and not everybody has them. Generally, the law says if you're not in your house, because the rules in your house are different. You're in your house, you can do whatever, use lethal force to defend yourself. If you're not in your house, most jurisdictions say before you can use deadly force, You have to see if you've got the ability to retreat safely. Can you run? Can you jump in a house? Can you jump in a car? Can you jump in a store? If you have the ability to retreat safely, you can't take out a gun and kill somebody in self-defense. Florida, one of the states that says, no, we're not going to say that's the rule. We're going to say if you genuinely feel that your life is in danger, you don't have to turn around and run. You can use deadly force as long as you didn't start this whole thing. You didn't create the situation that now says, okay, I'm going to start a fight with you. Oops, I'm losing. Here comes my .357. I'm not losing anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so this is going to be a really interesting debate on the notion of self-defense. I mean, how much are we going to allow our citizens? It's a debate on this whole idea of carrying guns.
Yeah,
how many people are going to allow to carry guns?
The national debate on the Second Amendment that was taking place, 4 to 6 weeks ago, and following those terrible shootings up in Newtown. I shouldn't say 4 to 6 weeks; it's been going on a long time, but escalated. The Trayvon Martin case never came up in the national dialogue, and I thought it was a perfect example for people who want to argue against too many guns or in favor of lessening the number of guns out on the street. Said the Harvard graduate. Struggling with the language. I was surprised that no one brought it up.
Yeah,
at least not that I heard.
I was surprised also.
Of course,
because
I was watching
you
the Jodi Arias case 24/7, so maybe somebody.
So exactly, but you know what? It's the trial is starting very soon. And what I think you're going to see, it's going to get back on the front pages, and it'll weave its way into that debate here. But I agree with you. I was surprised that it didn't pop up during the course of those discussions. But it's a case where trying to figure out what happened on that street in Florida is going to be hard to do because two people really know one of them's dead. And the other is now on trial for murder. So I think it's going to be a fairly compelling trial, and I think it's one that's going to generate a whole lot of interest and a whole lot of debate.
Do you think it has the chance of rising up? You went to law school, right?
Actually,
you graduated.
It was. I found a matchbook cover one time, and it said, "You too can be a lawyer."
Well, I watch a lot
of. It took me about 3 weeks. Took me about 3 weeks, and I was good.
Paul's been on Law and Order, so we clearly.
I'm an expert.
Yeah, we can say.
There was a time not that long ago where you could actually be licensed to practice law by what was called reading law. Now, you go back, I mean, major figures like Abraham Lincoln never went to law school, never went to college, but they studied in a lawyer's office. And until just a few decades ago, there were still some states where if you spent enough time with a lawyer, you could basically...
So your wife could be a lawyer.
I was going to say, maybe we can hang out more, Jack. I wouldn't mind being a lawyer.
Jim and I go back 40 years. He's ready to be a judge. Not just a lawyer. He's had all sorts of stuff under his belt.
Well, I was going to ask you, from my naivete about the law, I am a doctor, by the way, but in case you didn't know that, thanks to a Georgian court gave me an honorary doctorate. And I did a few appendectomies. Everybody was dying, so I stopped.
How much can they value? They gave both of us honorary doctorates at Georgian court. What were they thinking? Twice.
Bad. Do you think something like the Trayvon Martin case could eventually rise to the level of the Supreme Court? Do you think the issues are fundamental enough to our Constitution?
It's interesting because what's the fascinating thing about the U.S. Supreme Court is they get upwards of 10,000 applications each year for cases to be reviewed. Really? Think how many great issues are going to be within that list of 10,000 applications. Take a guess how many cases average they hear.
I can't imagine. It's
70.
Is that it?
That's it.
I was
sometimes
go with
less.
84.
Yeah,
I was going to go with 40.
So a case.
Sorry, you've all overbid.
For a case to get to the U.S. Supreme Court, staggering odds against it. There needs to be some sort of a basic constitutional issue, and the reason why I'm not so sure Trayvon Martin, whatever happens, would ever get there, is because it's really a fact-based case. It's not where, for instance, the state of Florida is saying that the stand your ground law is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
If that was the issue, if they were challenging the constitutionality of that law, then maybe it would work its way up. My guess is this thing is going to get tried, and either the prosecution is going to win when George Zimmerman will take an appeal, or the defense will win, in which case the case is over. I don't think, in its nature, you're going to see it work its way up to the Supreme Court.
Can we get more free legal advice from you in a couple of minutes?
If you come up with a theme song for me, I'll come back with free legal advice.
Jack's theme.
You're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. This portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show has been brought to you by Batch 19, a fine craft beer from 10th and Blake Beer Company. Passionate brewers and merchants of the world's finest beers. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to the Tim McLoone radio show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park with our guest, Jack Ford. Here's your host, Tim McLoone.
Struggling through the Perry Mason theme for Jack Ford. The way I wrote, that's Jack's theme. It's not Perry's theme. Well, Jack, you've been very kind to give us so much time and talk about all these different cases. I'm curious your take on the Eric Holder situation, the Attorney General for the United States, and what's going on here.
You know, the thing about the Attorney General is even though they're appointed by the president, it's the one office where you really need to have the appearance of impartiality and nonpartisanship. You know, if you go back to the Nixon era and Watergate, if you remember that Richard Nixon in what was called the Saturday Night Massacre fired two of his attorneys general because he had told them to back off of the investigation in Watergate, and they said, look, you appointed us, but we are independent. And he said, okay, yeah, you're fired now too. You know, and after that,
he is Donald Trump.
So it's the one, I think, office where you need the appearance of impartiality as much as the act of impartiality.
Like in quotes.
Stuff. Yeah.
Do you think it's very difficult to do that no matter how well-meaning you are?
I think there are times when things are going to happen that are out of your control, where one side or the other. I mean, if you indict a Republican governor, you know, who is in the midst of a tight race against a Democratic contender, I'm sure the Republicans are going to say, oh yeah, politics. You know, if you are a Democrat and if you're under a Democratic president. So there are always instances where somebody's going to raise the specter of you not being impartial. I think the problem here, if you look at what the IRS did, and even though what people are missing is there are some real reasons to take a hard look at political organizations that want to be tax exempt. I mean, we want everybody to take a hard look at that. I think the problem is they managed it so badly and made it look like the only organizations they were looking at were Tea Party organizations, conservative organizations, Republican organizations. If that's in fact what you're doing, then that's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. If you're looking at everybody who comes across your desk, regardless, then that's what your job is. So here, I still think we don't have the answers. But the problem in this day of instant information and multi-platforms is people don't take the time anymore to find out what the real facts are before they reach conclusions. You know, my problem I've always had with this explosion of media.
A great quote, you're entitled to your opinion.
That's exactly, yes, it's been which is essentially, look, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts. You know, and so what we need to do is find out what the facts are before we get to our opinions. Look, the reality is it looks very bad. If I'm Eric Holder, the Attorney General, I'm terribly disturbed at what's happening. If I'm the President, I'm starting to, and we're hearing, you know, some folks talking in the White House, not for attribution, but saying, you know what, even people in the White House might be thinking maybe it's time for him to step down. Just because being there so long, you can be the best Attorney General in the history of this nation. The more you're there, the more problems are going to pile up. You can't control them all. So, and Eric Holder, I know, he's a good and honest and decent guy, but did some things happen on his watch that maybe shouldn't have happened? I think that's what we're going to have to find out.
I mean, do you think in a sense that you throw the body to the masses, okay, Eric Holder, here he is, do with him what you will?
You know what?
That's not going to stop it.
It's not going to stop it. The sad thing is in this day of the politics of personal destruction, which I think we really engage in nowadays, you know, we no longer do we have politics of compromise. You know, even you, having gone to Harvard, might know some of this.
I don't remember anything.
But, you know, this country is founded on the notion of compromise. You can't have a democracy unless it's founded on compromise. Nowadays in Washington, if somebody utters the word compromise, it's some sort of a dirty word, and you're branded. Right. So everybody on each side of the aisle is going to object to what everybody on the other side of the aisle is going to do. The harsh reality is if Eric Holder would step down, it would back off some of the pressure on President Obama and on the Justice Department. Would it go away? No. It's probably going to show up again the next time you have a story that comes along. So I think it's become one of those jobs where you have to realize you're going to take a lot of hits. If you're willing to do this job, and it's a hard job to do, and the people that do it are usually sacrificing a whole lot of more money that they'd be making out in the private sector, you got to realize there are going to be a lot of hits. And right now, Eric Holder is the one who's taking those hits.
This is why I've always said I would never run for public office. I swear. Who does that? It's the worst.
Nowadays, you're right. How many good people have we lost because they said, I just don't want to subject myself to that?
Well, Jack Ford, you're a good person. Legal analyst for CBS News. Thanks so much for shedding light on a whole bunch of things that are going on in our world today.
I'm going to tell CBS now, I want my own theme song when I'm on in the morning. I want Tim McLoone playing the Perry Mason song.
I'm getting there.
For those of you who just joined us, you're listening to Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. We will be right back after this. Welcome back. You're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show, broadcasting to you from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park. This portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show is brought to you by My Jovi. My Jovi, the Power Coffee, is a new refreshing coffee beverage served cold or over ice or right out of the can. My Jovi can be enjoyed as an after-dinner drink, as a mixer with premium rum, scotch, or vodka, or for anyone on the go. And remember, My Jovi is a first drink at last call. The responsible choice. You can enjoy My Jovi at all of the McLoon's restaurants. My Jovi, ask for it by name. And now, here's your host, Tim McLoone.
Thanks, Paul Diamede.
Yeah.
My host.
Yeah.
I felt like I should have been playing something peppier behind a commercial for My Jovi. I'll have to figure this out. But anyway, we are so happy to have our good friend Maureen McCrink on with us. Hi, Maureen.
Welcome, Maureen.
Tim, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Tim. Boy, did our table really enjoyed Jack Ford. I mean, it was so
we probably
good.
should have stopped there.
It was so good. This is going to be totally different. But the sense, that he makes out of all of these things that we are constantly on the news, and you don't get that kind of just
You don't get the nuance. That's the
common
thing, too,
sense and really what it means to the rest of us.
It's funny when you run into somebody who knows stuff, isn't it?
It's
so
wonderful.
rare.
It's wonderful.
Those of us who just muddle along and trying to figure out life. Well, Maureen,
Yeah.
thanks so much. And as was mentioned earlier, you are a member of the Shirleys, our beloved singing group.
Sure am. How long has it been?
Oh, we don't even want to go there. We've talked about it so many times tonight. It's like I feel like I'm just going to walk out from here, check into the home.
That's it.
And that's it. I'm done.
Geriatric
No
center.
talk like that.
But, you were one of those precocious little kids singing at the proverbial early age. But were you showbiz? Is that what you thought was going to happen? Is that all along?
The funny thing, I really never had any plans in my life, but I love to sing. I'm kind of in the moment kind of a person, okay? And I was telling you the other day, actually, about I was 11 years old. I was at Bodmin Park with my best friend, Diana
In
Marito.
Red Bank?
Bodmin
in
Park
Middletown.
in Middletown.
Actually, on the other side of the river from Red
It's
Bank.
called Sunken City now, that area. Danny Petratus immortalized it. And anyway.
That's one of the coolest names for an area of a town, by the way.
Sunken City. It was a
just
development.
implies steamy August nights, illegal fireworks. I don't know what's going on. Making out. I don't know. Sunken City.
Near Sleepy Hollow Road and Cooper Road and Navesink River Road. And anyway, in the summertime in Bodmin Park, we'd have summer theater. And I was over there one morning actually, with my good friend Diane, and the stage was set up. And it truly was a beautiful morning. And so what came out, but oh, what a beautiful morning. And before I knew it, I was just working my way up to the stage because my mother taught me well. Our household was kind of
But it was empty,
a
right?
musical
I mean,
comedy.
It was just the
it
two
was
of you
just
were there?
Diane and I,
Yeah.
and the birds, the robins, and I was up on the stage, and I went through the entire thing with the choreography, Tim, and 11 years old, and at the end, Diane is sitting there, Maureen, that was great, kind of like Amy would do today. Thank you, Amy.
Our friend Amy Bros, another Cheryl, sitting 12 feet away from us, dangerously close, I might add.
So I knew I loved doing it, but I was extremely shy.
But I think that's sort of a typical thing that you would hear from a lot of performers. It's the battle over the thing that, in a sense, that your greatest fear. I mean, I don't think any of us think about it much anymore.
Right.
I mean, we've been playing music for people all of our lives, and I still get nervous, but mostly it's just like, am I going to remember the words? What was that chord? I knew I should have practiced this before I came out here tonight. But beyond that, I think it feels much more natural now.
Sure.
But it didn't then, for sure.
No, but it's what gave me my voice.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't really carry on a conversation with a stranger, but I could sing them a song. I would do that.
Well, that's the thing about you is that what makes you light up, and when we do our Holiday Express shows, which is sort of how we all re-met.
Right.
Because we'd known each other 40, and this year I go again, who knows how many years ago. We were kind of playing the same circuit. But you were different because you were doing original material too. While the rest of us were slaving over 95% cover material, playing other people's songs and trying to learn all the chords to different things, you were writing. And that made you stand out. And your good friend George Severini was writing.
Oh, my God.
And you were doing original stuff.
Well, that's where I was inspired. I was just out of high school, and George asked me, could you join our group? We're going to be doing music that I've written and my brother Robert's written, and we're going to ask Mark Murphy to join us. And
there was the
it'll be the
mistake.
four of us. And, Mark at the time was... I think he was 16, and he had to get an ABC card to work in the
bars.
club, right?
He barely knew his ABCs, but that's the kind of material I do on this show, by the way.
Yeah, but it was original music, and people, to us, they became standards. And people remember them to this day. And now, Tim, you write songs. We've recorded your songs.
We have. I don't know. And they're
We
available if
try.
anyone. They're in the trunk of my car now.
We try. We have great heroes that we aspire to, but
No, but our stuff's great. I mean, it is fun. Are you going to favor us with a song today?
I would love to.
Hoping.
I would love to. I'll grab my guitar.
Well, Maureen McCrink, one of the great voices of the Jersey Shore, to say the least, and a full-time, full-fledged member of Holiday Express. We go out every year roughly between Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. And we do shows for people who, if we're not there, get little or no attention. Was that a sufficient introduction for you here? All right, Maureen. Ladies and gentlemen, Maureen McCrink.
A little song I wrote quite a few years ago, living in Grenier's Guest House in Highlands, New Jersey. The Jersey Riviera. Springtime comes, springtime knows, springtime got me wearing a new kind of clothes, got me up in the morning, got me down on the street. Springtime got me walking with a new kind of beat. Something crazy gotta be going on around here. I couldn't yell it, I couldn't spell it, oh, but I could sniff it in the air, and I know that it sounds so crazy, but I swear they both are true. Springtime got me forgetting all about, and then remembering you. Shows springtime's the time I got to follow me, no, they got me up without warning, down in the sweet clover, all over, all around and under my feet. Just this morning I tripped on the garden hose. Who'd have thought that green snake could be hiding under the melting snow, and it's melting, 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 and my heart begins to sing. Spring, spring. And I saw it out my window as I had my 3 p.m. cup. Something invisible was out there moving. Something is up. Something is up. Something is. Something is up. Something is. Something is up. Something is.
Fabulous. And I do
I
me
haven't
fabulous.
played that in a while,
Maureen
Tim. Thank
McCrink.
you.
That was wonderful.
This portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show is brought to you by My Jovi. My Jovi, the power coffee, a new refreshing coffee beverage served cold or over ice right out of the can. My Jovi can be enjoyed as an after-dinner drink. My Jovi is the first drink at last call, the responsible choice. You can enjoy My Jovi at all of McLoon's restaurants. My Jovi, ask for it by name. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after
Yes,
this.
we will, whether you want us to or not. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have the one, the only, Steve the bartender. Hello, Steve.
Welcome, Steve.
Hey, guys.
Steve, what can I say? We haven't spoken to you in a while. You've had a chance to see a lot of really fabulous movies. The one that is ruling the planet right now, which is just, it's unbelievable to me how much money they're making on this thing, but Fast and Furious 6 with the appropriately named Vin Diesel. How could you not have a guy named Vin Diesel in a movie about cars? So what'd you think?
It's entertaining.
Okay.
It's exactly what you'd expect from a movie with fast cars, beautiful women, and explosions. That's really all
As
it is.
my teenage boys would say, is there a problem with that? But you didn't like it very much, right? Or what did you think?
It is what it is. It's just a movie. It's just entertaining. It's visually stunning. But if you try to dig deep into a plot, there isn't one.
It's not a plot at all.
Well, had you seen 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5?
All of them.
Yeah, you're the man.
Wow.
You're the man, you know. How do you even come into work here? I don't understand. It's like, listen, put that on pause. I'll be back in a few hours. I got to go work at this dump. You know?
I stay up late at night watching new movies, new shows, just for the entertainment value, to see what else is out there. And then I fall asleep around 5 a.m., get up at 9 a.m.
How long was Fast and Furious 6?
2 hours, 12 minutes.
Oh, really?
See, that's what I love
that's
about Steve.
strange.
He knows the exact amount of time that the movie took.
But that's unusual. For one, I would expect that to be like 90 minutes. Get in, get their money, get the heck out.
The others were shorter, an hour 30, hour 40. This one was a wrap up for a lot of the other ones. There were a lot of unanswered questions in all the other ones, and this one
And
they
they've
all
been
come together.
They've been worrying me. I mean,
All those questions I had from 4 and 5.
how many miles to the gallon do they get in that thing?
It's rough. It's definitely rough.
It's not exactly Downton Abbey going on here, but, well, my friend Bob Keogh taught me years ago that if you want to judge a movie before you go see it, just if it's on TV a lot showing you the coming attractions, don't go. There has rarely been a movie that I've seen the coming attractions more than After Earth. The Will Smith, Jaden Smith vehicle. Was Bob Keogh right? You saw it, right? You saw After Earth?
Yeah. It fell short.
Oh, you are such a nice man. You really are.
No, I'm very.
Other people would say it sucked, but he says it fell short.
I'm very accepting of a lot of films, but this one just had nothing to offer. It was visually also.
It looks
fun
like
to
a
watch.
great idea, though.
It was a great idea.
So tell people what the basic plot is of After Earth.
Well, Will Smith and his son.
Besides Will Smith making money.
Jaden. Yeah. They're. It's 1,000 years in the future. It's the year 3000. We've had to colonize another planet, another solar system.
We still haven't paid off our mortgage here.
Because we destroyed Earth.
Thank God I don't have to pay my mortgage. We destroyed Earth.
We completely just. It was unlivable. So we colonized another planet. But 1,000 years later, accident happened where Jaden Smith and his father, Will Smith, are traveling across the universe and end up crashing on Earth 1,000 years later. It's not what you remember it being. It's nuclear downfall or outfall.
Holocaust or whatever.
The devastation of the planet.
This is based on a true story, I believe.
It's beautiful because after 1,000 years, all the nuclear radiation is dissipated, but all the animals are different now. It's almost like 10,000 years ago. Wow. The animals are bigger, stronger, more fierce. But the whole movie, it's just this little 12-year-old kid overcoming his fear to get his father's acceptance. But the acting is just horrible.
I read somewhere that Will Smith snored his way through it.
Yeah.
But he produced, or did he wrote it, right?
Produced, wrote, and starred.
I was also advised by someone else, don't go see a movie that the person who produced it stars in it.
Yeah.
I think it was you, Paul.
Yes.
That movie you
produced. Because I've produced several movies, so.
Don't go see that.
I heard today that there's a hidden message in the movie. It's they don't think so, but it has something go along with L. Ron Hubbard. And they're thinking Will Smith's a client or closet Scientologist. And that's why he wrote this story. They think he has something to do with the whole Scientology.
Gee, you don't think that would be anyone saying, we got a stinker here. If we put this thing, maybe people will go see if they discover it.
Yeah, it's another.
And if you play it, if you see the movie backwards, it says Paul is dead. It's amazing. It's hard to do that. But So have you seen anything you really, really liked that anyone will ever hear of? That's usually a big thing here, right. Steve. You see a lot of esoteric stuff.
I saw Epic.
Okay.
It's an animated movie from DreamWorks. A bunch of not super famous celebrities, but it's a lot of good voice work. Colin Farrell.
See, I never care about who does that. I honestly don't. I mean, every once in a while, somebody, like when Ray Romano did Ice Age, you can't miss Ray Romano's voice. But there's some other people would tell me later on, oh, yeah, that was that actress from...
Right.
I don't care.
Well,
but did it rise on its own level? I mean...
yeah, it was very original. It's kind of like...
on its own level, that was another great sentence for me, but go ahead.
But I'm trying to come up with a proper phrasing for it. But it was a cute kids movie, and for adults, it's a good family flick. But the bad guy was the best character. It was Christopher Waltz from Django and Inglourious Bastards. He always plays a great good guy, but even better bad guy. And you can recognize his voice a mile away. It's that really heavy German accent, and he does a great job as the villain. And that's another 2 hour, 6 minutes, a little over 2 hours. But it's a good kids movie, and it will hold their attention. I loved it. I love those animated movies. They're fun.
Well, I agree.
There's so much more you can do with them.
Yeah, I have to ask you. So, going to the TV side, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Of course.
That's got to be you. That's got to be like your religion almost.
Yeah,
you know?
that's my number one favorite.
Did you
show.
see the final episode? I mean, what's the
deal?
deal?
Final episode's airing this Sunday. This was the second final episode.
That'll be last Sunday when people hear this. But
yeah,
we're doing a little time travel ourselves here from the Supper Club. We're going 1,000 years in advance and then talking about Game of Thrones. But you're into it. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. I have to admit, I struggle with fantasy. I just really do.
There's some fantasy. But if you just take it for what it is, it's almost a medieval-based show with a lot of like family bickering and war. Yeah. Like it's Braveheart meets like Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. It's like families and tyrants fighting against all different types of creatures. But it's a good show, and it is my number one favorite. The acting is phenomenal. When episode's done airing, you have no questions.
Wow. Well, Steve the bartender, thank you again for telling us what to see and what not to see.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you all for tuning in today and sharing this hour with us. Tune in every Saturday afternoon from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on WOR 710 AM and on iHeartRadio. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Tim McLoone Radio. The accounts and descriptions of this broadcast are the property of McLoone Broadcasting.
Own it all.
That's right.
You can't have it.
The retransmission or rebroadcast of any part of the Tim McLoone Radio Show without express written consent from
I'm
McLoone
not signing
Broadcasting
anything.
is strictly prohibited. This show is produced by TME. The coordinating producer is Virginia Sanderson.
She's fabulous.
The technical director and associate producer is the one and only Dana Noto.
That Dana Noto?
That Dana Noto. Our sound engineers are Tony Lasardo and Thomas Bishop. For Tim McLoone, I am Paul Diamini.
Bishop.
And we will see you next week on the radio.